Now, so let's just see what we've got. So if we look at the surfaces here, and we'll put some highlights on there without transparency on. So the highlights are looking all right, I think. The one area that does bother me is if I go and pick the mesh. So on the mesh, you can actually put highlights on as well, and you can see from the highlights that the mesh is pretty smooth actually in general. But one of the areas that I've talked about before, and I haven't fixed this yet, and probably should have looked at it earlier, but is this area where we've got highlights which are really smooth all the way through here, and then we get these features happening here, so it starts to separate out. But we do need an area down here that's all going to be consistent, and at the moment I haven't got that. I've got separate surfaces here, so if we look at the highlights on those surfaces, we got a separation between the two, so that needs to be all joined up, and it's going to affect this surface slightly, so I need to fix that. And let's have a look at that. So let me bring in the front wheel arch. Which seems to have disappeared. Maybe it's on, oh, it's on body side, it's just under different. Maybe I should put that in the right layer. You can see I don't bother too much with things being the right layer at this stage. It's only when you do the final model, but of course you do need to be able to find them. So we've got this area here. So what I'm going to try and do is to put in a surface right across the center all the way to this edge here, and see if we can build that, and then try and get these other surfaces to match up with that, which is going to be tricky, I think. And so I'm not sure whether I've got any curves there or not. I've got something called curve smooth. Oh, that's up there, isn't it? So probably time to sort all of this out, but maybe I'll do that offline. So we'll create yet another layer called curves 3 this time. Let's make that green. And I'm not sure whether I really need to put the curves in, to be honest, but we'll do it anyway. So if I go into duplicate, interactive is off for a change. So I want, actually I've got a curve there, but I really want to rebuild those curves there. And let's get rid of the old one, which is that one. It's too short anyway by the looks of things. So I should have two curves there. Let me just check that's the case. Yeah. So I'm going to use those two curves, and I'm going to use the edges of these surfaces, which may or may not be right. We don't need to put curves on there actually. Now I want to put in a surface right across there. I'm going to use this edge, and this one as a starting point, and what I'm going to use is a thing called profile, which is similar to rail. But has slightly more powerful. So we're going to have profiles. We're going to have a generation curve or multiple generation curves. So the advantage of this is I can pick up multiple curves here. I'm just going to go into body as my layer that I'm going to put this on. So I'm going to pick, so we have to look at the messages up here. It says select curves or surface curves for profile set selection. So the first profile I'm going to pick is this one, and I can actually pick multiple curves if I wanted to, but I'm only going to pick one for this profile. And then once I've picked it, I then have to accept. So I use the space bar to do that. Then it says select curves or surface curves for profile set selection. So it's looking for another profile, which is going to be that one. And then again, I press the space bar, and then it says select curves or surface curves for profile set. So it's looking for another one, which is going to be this one. So it doesn't matter which one. Well, I'm going to pick that one because it's shorter. And I'm going to accept that with the space bar. And it's still looking for more profiles curves. So you can have as many as you like. But I've finished picking those now. So I've hit the space bar once. I'm now going to hit it again to say that I've finished picking the profiles. And then now it says select curves or surface curves for rail path. So it calls it a rail path rather than a whatever it calls it in the rail. Well, it probably calls it the same thing. Can't remember. So the rail path is going to be this curve and that curve, and then we can. So having picked all of the curves that we want in that direction, then we can press build, and it creates us a curve, creates us a surface. And obviously that surface it goes all the way up to this edge, which we don't necessarily want. Now we can modify the surface to some extent, and if I put auto update on, we'll see that happening. So you can modify the range going that way if you wanted to. Not that I do. So I want to go from the start to the finish in this case, but you could do it halfway around if you wanted to. So I've got those surfaces in. I need to look at the sections, see what we've got here, and we can guarantee that they're not going to be where we want them to be. But actually the center one is pretty much the same as the original surface, to be honest. This one is not quite in the right place, as you can see. But it's a starting point. It gives us a consistency across there. Or something. It's the important point really is that we've got. I mean, I don't know why I've got that. I probably didn't need to create that center bit, to be honest, but I've got those two surfaces there. So let me just get rid of that one. Actually, that was not necessary. Oops. Pick that again. So let's get rid of that one. Didn't actually need that one to be honest. Now these won't be aligned to each other, but the thing is that at least we've got two surfaces of the same length. That's the important thing there. Now somehow I've got to get those to join up, because if I look at those, they're not aligned at the moment. You can see that. You can just see that by looking at the wireframe, that they're not aligned. Now the other thing is we've got this big surface in the middle. So if I just untrim that, and we look at the sections going through here, you can see the section here where it's extending way beyond where we're using it. It's diving down and cutting into this surface, and you know, certainly at this section we need that to actually be lifted up a bit, because otherwise we're never going to be able to get these other surfaces to hang off it. So let me just go and take all of the CVs off, and then I'll put CVs on that one. So it's really in this area here where all of this comes together, that this surface isn't actually quite right, that it does need to be modified a bit. And obviously this is going to affect, you know, we've aligned things to it, but if we do a modification around here, then it will change the alignment in these areas. Like if I go into the locators and just check the distance there. In fact, we've got curve on surface there, so I can just go into evaluate surface continuity and just have a look at that. So at the moment we've got that aligned, and obviously if we're going to change this big block, which is what I'm planning to do, then it will change that alignment there. If you were desperate to not change that, then we'd have to split this surface up in some way, but I don't really want to do that, because then you end up with an unnecessary number of surfaces, and it's actually quite easy to realign that if it comes apart. So on this surface here, I think we've only got 4 CVs going this way, and I want a quite localized change here. So I'm just going to increase the degree in that direction. So let's make it 5. So we've got a bit more of a localized possibilities here. So let's go into moving CVs around. So I'm just going to lift that up so that we get a bit closer to where we want to be. So if I make it slightly higher than the data in here, then hopefully we'll be able to get these other surfaces to sit correctly on it, and you can see that's lifted that by 1.6 mil at that point. But by the time you get back here, like if I go into surface continuity there, that's only 0.1 of a mil, so that'll easily realign, and I don't think I'm too worried about that, to be honest, either. That won't do any harm if we lift that up a bit. So let's see. We've got, I know this is quite difficult to see now because we've got so much stuff going on here. Let me take the sections off temporarily. So we've got that and that. Let's put the CVs on there. And we've got a curve on surface there, so we can go into surface continuity again, just check what that is. So there's a gap of 5 mil there. And I'm going to get rid of that curve on surface just so I can align it, projecting it in the Z direction. Now, the reason it's failed is there's a line failed with error 11, not enough CVs, is because we've got blend on. So it's trying to, there's not enough CVs there for the extra CV rows is 2, and we don't want that anyway. So I'm going to do that. And then we need to increase the degree just to get that to align. So let's make it 5. And I've got create history on. So now when we modify this, we'll be able to see what's happening to this front surface. And it actually looks absolutely fine against the data. It's slightly high on the data there, but that's okay, I think. And then we can also, so by using history, I'm hoping that I'll be able to see what happens as we align things together. So this one here, we want to align this profile surface into this center one. So, and let's have a look at the sections there. So let me just revert that and do that again. So that's the profile into there. I'm just watching the sections around here. So those sections have hit the data quite nicely, actually, by the looks of things. Right, so we've now got, there's a bit of deviation going on here between the surface and the data. Now, having aligned that there, it might have pulled it off this curve, which we ought to check. So I can say curve to curve and just check between that profile surface and the rebuild. And it says 0, but that's good. So I want to modify this now to get a bit closer to that data there. So let's go into modifying CVs. Let's have a look at that in plan view. So the CVs have come forward a bit, which doesn't look quite right. So first of all, in plan view, I'm going to put proportional modification on, pull that point. Oops. There. So I'm putting all those 3 points, leaving that one where it is because we know that's matched to the curve. And I'm just going to pull that back. I should put some Z sections on as well, I suppose. So I'm looking at the CV pattern. So I'm just making sure that that CV is further back than this one, that we don't want that going on. We don't want it zigzagging. We want it to come back this way. And then we can rotate that around and have a look at it. I've still got that center of interest thing keeps popping up, and so let's go back into general preferences, and we want to turn that off. And so it's under navigation, show point of interest jack. I don't want that because it keeps on throwing me out of the view that I want. So you can see this is dropped down relative to this surface, so that's not quite right either. I suspect that what's going on here, you know, I've made this surface all the way up to here, and that's excessive. We really want this surface to be a bit further just in the front rather than all the way up there. That's probably asking too much. I mean, what you can do, because I've got history on the align here and the align here, I can take that point, which is on the main blog, if I wanted to. I'm not sure I do want to do this, but I could actually pick that and then move that up and see everything else updating. So you can see this section here is getting a bit closer in doing that. Obviously, it's pulling this away further. I mean, looking at this, I know this is really difficult to see what's going on. When you're actually working on it, you find that you can, to some extent, see it a bit more clearly. But I know looking at it as an observer, there's a lot going on. But because I've got that history on, I can actually adjust this. So maybe bring that point back a little bit, just to make that a little bit less further away from where it was, so it's like 1.8 or something. But the important thing is to get this smooth across here. So I think, as I say, this is too far this way, and so I'm actually going to go and delete the history up there. I'm also going to save this. And I think this, as this is too far this way, now I've got history off, I can actually bring this down. So I'm going to just bring this down to a point where I think that was maybe more sensible, because the trouble is I've got to change this surface. I've got to actually align this surface to this edge or something like it. And the other thing is this surface, if I take that edge back, because eventually this needs to be aligned, maybe I could do that. That would be the thing to do. So this edge is going to be where we're going to align these together, if that makes sense. So looking at that one, just take the sections off again, so you can hopefully see that a bit clearer. So we've got two surfaces there. We've got that one and this one, and I'm going to, the reason I want this edge to stay where it is, more or less, is because if I start trying to trim convert this surface to this edge, it's going to change it quite a lot. If I can trim it to something like this, then or trim convert it to that edge there, trim this one, then the alignment won't be so, it shouldn't throw it out so much. This edge is a bit wobbly, and I'm just going to make that into a straight line. I'm going to go from here to here. Somewhere like that. And then we're going to go and trim convert that, projecting it in the view. So that shouldn't change it very much. If I say show surface deviation, if I wanted to find out what that is, it says 0.3 of a mil. So it's not too much. And we'll extend this curve this way, because then I can take this surface here and do the same thing with that, or trim convert that one as well. So I'll get rid of that curve. So I just want to check that that's position aligned there. It's something, this front surface is something I wish I'd done a bit earlier in a way, but then it helps, you know, that it's always knowing which way round to do these things. If I didn't have that surface in place, then I wouldn't have something to judge this on. So it's all And you have to be able to fix these problems. You get these problems inevitably, and you have to be able to fix them. That one there, what's going on there? We've got that surface in there. That's why that was coming up as an error, because we've got an untrimmed edge there, which I was comparing with the wrong thing. So that's why it seemed to come up with an error. But that's the one that I want to check. So we need to align this now to here. So align that to there. Now this one, you can see that last point there doesn't look so happy, and we might just be able to reduce the degree in the other direction. You can tell I just guess which direction it is half the time, because I can't always see the U or the V directions. So by doing it that way, by just making it a lower degree, then it sort of cleans that up without us having to worry about blend or anything. I've got create history on there. It's opened up a tiny little gap on there, but it's microscopic. And of course, there is a difference here, because we did deviate from the mesh in this area just to get that wheel arch sort of following that line rather than the line on the mesh itself. So that's why there's a bit of a difference there. And it might be worth just looking at those, not that one, and just throwing some highlights on there and just checking that we're okay highlight wise. So they all seem to flow okay. And then, yeah, so what I've done there is probably messed that up actually, because I'm no longer aligned to this. This surface here, let's isolate that, get rid of that curve on surface there. Because it picks up the sections when you pick curve on surface, it picks up all the sections, which I can recreate, of course. So the problem I've got here is that this is actually dropped down now, which wasn't really what I wanted to do. Yeah, I've managed to drop that down. Obviously, there's a surface in there that joins all of that up, and but what I'm going to do here is just make that a little bit shorter as well, and see whether we can do that. So I'm going to make that come into about the same length as this. And then we'll align that. I'm going to align that with history on in project. And because we've only got a low degree, that's easily, it's just going to do whatever it does. Now we're very high on the data here, and but because we've got history on, again, I can go and modify this surface once more, because it's coming in at far too high, and it's because I've shortened that surface considerably. So I'm going to have to modify this. I'm going to do it by pushing that front row or front hole back a bit. So I'm pushing it in the X direction. Yeah, just checking I've got the right plane on by putting the grid on. So I'm going to have to, I haven't got a history on there. So I've got to join this up to here. And so I'm going to put history on there again. And there's a big gap there. So this is going to change this quite a bit again. We just put proxy display on, see where we've come from. So it's actually not changed it too much. And actually the sections are pretty close still. So we've got that continuity going that way, and then we'd need to align this one back into it again. As I say, it's a very difficult area because this is a problem you come across quite a bit, where you've got a common surface going through, which is what I'm trying to create, and then you've got one surface coming off going in one direction, and another surface going off in another direction, and trying to get all of that to work together is really tricky, and trying to do it quickly is even trickier. So if I align that curvature now, I'm trying to work out what's going on here. So we've got this dip, which we're going to add. These are going to be extra surfaces in here. This dip is formed by extra surfaces. So the important thing is, are we hitting this point here? So we've got this area here, which is the blend going down there. It's quite difficult to make out. And what I need to do as well is, I've lost that continuity again on here. Let's go and check that. Let's try and align that again. So because I've only got degree 4 going that way, then I'm actually breaking the curvature at this end because of this middle hull, and so I need to increase that, whichever way that is. I can't see it. In that way. Now this feels too high because it's going to come back down to here at some point, but it just feels a little bit too high here. I've got history on that one. I've got history this way, that way, and that way. So if we modify the main block, everything should change. So I'm just going to isolate those CVs there. Just see if we can adjust that and just bring it down to towards the data a little bit more, because it's going a bit high here, I think. And I'll put a bit of mouse sensitivity on there just to slow it down a bit. It might be that this blend bit needs to come much further up here in order to get down to this area. So we're a bit low on there and then a bit high on here. I mean, it might be that we need to increase the degree going across there, because we've got very low degree. Yeah, so let's make that a bit higher. It just means we've got more localized. We can make the change more localized that way. Ooh. Bring that point down a bit. It's trying to visualize how this is all going to work together. I'm finding quite difficult to get my head around, I have to say. It may be that the blend, maybe that blends out, maybe that disappears a bit earlier or something, to get this all to work. Right, I'm now going to save that. And what we'll do is just pick all of the surfaces, and we'll take the sections off. And then we'll put highlights on. So if I look at that, we've got overlapping surfaces, so it's impossible to see really what's going on. But what you can do is, if we turn it upside down, then on the inside we can see we've got a flow of highlights through there, which is what we want. And maybe, you know, you can use different shaders, of course, to see what's going on. But that's what I was after, is trying to create that flow going through there. So that's working. We can use different, you know, the ISO ang as well to see what's going on in terms of the X direction. So that's the sort of thing I wanted in this area. So that all looks like it's quite nice. I mean, there's probably something in there that we could maybe fine tune. That looks a little bit wobbly there. So maybe what we should do is do that again, but create curves, maybe not so many bands on it. And then we just say show curves only. So whether there's much we can do to adjust this, I'm not sure, because it's constrained in all directions. Let's have a look at that in top view. So the CVs have gone off a little bit, and it's because we've been aligning it in all directions there. So let's take the history off. I just want to tidy up those CVs, because that will helps us to understand what the shapes are doing, for one thing. And so I'm going to use slide, because what slide does, I mean, it's changing the angle a little bit, but what it does is it just means by sliding them along those holes, it keeps it closer to where it was originally. And if I pick on this side, it keeps the tangency more or less. I mean, it's changed it a little bit. It's 0.38, but so these ones I do on that side. And then, of course, you can move them that way as well. And then we look at them in 3D. So you can see that I think the highlights are happening, the bad highlights are happening because this CV dips down in that view now. So it does look as though we need to raise this up a little bit. So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to go back into align. I'm going to align that into there, but rather than just aligning it with edge on, I'm going to put vector on, so that in the top view, at least, those CVs should be the same as we've just designed them. And then we can go, and I'm going to go back to that original surface. Bear in mind, we've got history going that way, and then that way. So this all should change if I change that main block. So let me just, I can't see the CVs with everything going on there. So I'm going to do this again. I know this surface looks very odd because this raises up so much, but it's because it's such a complicated shape. So let's go and pick one point and move it up and down in X and in Z, and just see what happens there. I should put the CVs on this one actually, because that's the one that we're looking at. So we should hopefully see those CVs improve. The fact that that's not entirely aligned doesn't matter, because it's a very small amount. It's mainly just seeing the big picture. So these points look better when I've raised that up a little bit, and you can see that it sorts the highlights out as well. So with this one, because it's a very, very tiny little angle mismatch there. If we go into here and we can delete the history a bit, and then we just go back into realign, and rather than doing G2, I'll do the trick where we just try and align it in G1, because that's the only error there is. And I've not got vector on, so it's still saying there's a little bit of an error there, and it could be as small an error as caused by just moving CVs up and down a bit. Let's just check against the wheel arch. Those are okay. Oh, that one's come apart. That's weird. I thought that was okay. Well, maybe that's a problem. Actually, no, we did. It was because I dropped the degree, wasn't it, earlier on? Again, it's a tiny amount, really. Let's just make that, just align that. Like I say, because this is a concept model, I'm going completely over the top with these tolerances. We don't actually need these tolerances so tight, but I'm just doing it to try and show that you can work to these tolerances if you needed to. So you might find that that goes if I just move that point up and down, which is very counterintuitive, but and weird, but that's how it does it. But sometimes it's the distance between these CVs this way that actually affects the tangency. And obviously we don't want just tangency, we want to have a look at that in terms of curvature. So you can actually go and pick the locator and you can change it here. This is just another way of getting to the curvature, and lo and behold, the curvature is okay. And so we need to bring everything back, and I'll take those the highlights off. So we've got to go into ISO ang, and then we can say delete curves there, and then come out of that, get rid of that. I know this is not as tight as it could be, but I'm not going to bother sorting that out. The main thing that we're interested in as a concept is to make sure that the highlights are good. Now, for some reason that's gone off. I'm not quite sure why that happened, because I don't think I changed that, but then I'm just trying to rush things to. Let's just check that. Okay, don't know why that went off, but obviously I did something wrong, and which is very annoying because that doesn't quite go to the end there. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to do Control C, Control V, and then just extend the copy. Doesn't matter which one I pick really, and doesn't matter about the CVs going all a bit mad. Let's just align that back into there. So I'm aligning it into the big one, because if I try and align it to the short one, of course, that's not going to work. And so for some reason that's gone slightly off. So I'm just going to go and increase the degree. Get rid of that. Oh, what? Does that come off? So obviously when I align that in position there, that it's come away. Quite sure why that's come away quite a lot. Just go around this again. Maybe what I should do is just delete the history. Whether history's caused a problem here, I don't know. Just need to go around and just double check everything. It's okay. Put partial on there. So we've got position there. There's an angle mismatch going on there when I do that. And doesn't really reduce much if I increase the degree, which is a sort of cheating way of doing it. That's annoying, because maybe it wasn't aligned before and I thought it was. It's always possible. Let's go into here and put the CVs on there. Just thinking, can I just do it this way? Don't really want to do that. No, I don't really want to change that. Well, the other way to do this, because we have got this surface, we've split this surface up here. We had to do that. We could split this surface at this point, rather than trying to go around the houses trying to get this to work. So let's go into here and I should have kept that previous one, of course, but so Control C, Control V, and then we're going to extend that back again. I think I've got multiple ones on now, haven't I? That won't help at all. Somehow I've managed to create a lot of surfaces there, so I'll just delete those 3. That would definitely not help. Oh no. Right, let me go and open up that one that I've just, it's a good job I'm saving regularly. Let's go back to this. So what are we actually looking at here? I don't quite know how I've ended up with so many copies of the same surface by the looks of things. So I've got 2 copies of that. And just want to see whether those are the same or whether they're different. So I'm going to just measure from one to the other. They're 0.6 of a mil different. That really is annoying. Ah, what's going on here? Well, that's a later one, so I would suspect that that's probably the one that we may want, but I don't know. Really don't know what's happened here. Oh, still got it. I haven't got rid of it yet. So let me make that. Yeah, it's because I made it invisible, of course. Right, let me just check that one. It's not that one. So let's just check the. So that was the new one I was comparing. So let's take the old one. Let me just check that I've got the old one. That's the old one, 54. And that's also an error. Okay, let's have a look and see whether. So it's saying 2 curves and surface there. This would definitely not be helping. Let me go and find those, and then we'll have a look at that one. So if I compare that with 66, is this a line? That all aligns with 66. So if I go and pick all of that lot and not that one, and then bring everything back, and then I'll bring in 54. And I'm not even sure whether we've got curves and surface on that, have we? Yes, we have. Right, doesn't match up with 54. So it looks like 54 is the one that's out of date. So I'm going to template that, delete all those locators. And that's the one we want to align to. Right, okay. To make sure all that's all okay. And then this one. And then we'll go into here, position, check that one. Okay, so we just need to sort out this tangency now. And yeah, so clearly if I try and align this into there, then it pulls the position away because this surface doesn't go all the way to the edge because we've got this fill-in surface there. So we do need to split this up. So having sorted that out, I think, hopefully, I'm just going to save that again. And I'm going to split that. I'm just going to detach it. So object edit, detach, and we're going to drag that around there. It's there. So we actually want to delete these locators because they're now out of date. And probably that one as well, because it might well pick up the wrong edge there, and then we can go back and just evaluate all of that again. That one there, make sure I pick the right one, and that one there, so that's fine. So now we want to align that into there. So we start off with this one, so we're going to align that. It's going to be an edge, it's going to be a partial edge, this one into here, and obviously that's going to then break this, so we then want to align this into here, and I'll take partial off. I don't want history on that, can cause no end of problems, as I've said, in areas where you're trying to align on several different edges. And then we're going to do G0 on that one, just make sure. Just check that that one is position, otherwise we'll be wasting our time trying to align. And then we do G2, not a partial edge, that one into there. And so this is broken, this. Now let's have a look at this one, because looking at that, because I just detached it, it does mean that wherever it's, when you detach it, it's going to come off at an angle in terms of this view, and you can see that that's what's happened. In general, it's going to come off at an angle, and so if I now extend this one actually looks fine, so that looks cleaner than the other one, so I'm going to extend that way. Let's bring this one back in so we can see what's going on. So I'm now going to trim convert this one to that new edge in this view. So we're going to project it in the view, bit there, and of course we need to reevaluate that. So hopefully this is a bit closer, which it is, 0.17 the gap now. So let's go into Object Edit and we'll align this. Now that all aligns, which is part of that's good news. We want to then, let's trim this out so we can see a bit clearer what's going on. And then we'll bring in our diagnostics, and hopefully our highlights are still reasonably good. They look okay. In this area here, there's going to be other surfaces on top of surfaces, so that looks absolutely fine, I think. So ISO ang, and there's that highlight there. You know, the more time you spend on these things, the cleaner you'll be able to get them, of course. And as I say, I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible so that we don't spend too much time messing around with it. Right, let's just work backwards and just check that this all starts to align up. I haven't made any other serious errors. So that's aligned, that's aligned. Okay. Save that again. Oh, we've got a tiny little gap there. It's so small, 0.001. I'm not even going to bother with it because we're going to put a fillet over that anyway. You know, in reality, I probably would go around fixing everything, of course, but it's bigger things to sort out than worry about that. And we've modified that big surface, which you know, sometimes you have to do that sort of thing rather than splitting it up. But there comes a point where splitting it up is the only solution, which is what we've discovered in this area. But because I've changed the big surface, even though I've only changed the front of it, all the way to the back of it will be changed. But when you get to the very back of it, hopefully that won't have changed very much at all, and may still be in tolerance. Well, almost 0.003. So you know, you can hopefully, you know, sometimes you find that it's not actually changed it at all up here in terms of tolerance, but other times you find that it's slightly out, which is what's happened here. So I just want to make sure that this is all now back in tolerance, and it's a tiny change, as I say. So best thing to do is to delete the curve on surface, bring the CPs back in. So I mean, if I thought about this, if I'd built that first, then of course we'd have saved having to rework this, but that's just life, unfortunately, sometimes. And so let's align this back in G2 project Z. And that shouldn't have changed it very much. I mean, I should probably check it against the original, if really, but I'm not going to bother. And so these ones here, also they need changing. Now this one, I built this as a big block all the way through, just to make things simpler. We could just trim convert that, so we don't have to bother about realigning that into there. You know, if it was A class, then we would build the block, rebuild the blocks, but I'm not going to do that. So that's just shortened the surface there. That makes it just a little bit simpler to then realign. So on these ones, if we do an alignment, just out of interest, let's have a look at see how far we are out here. I think I've moved it quite a bit actually. So I'm just going to have a look at that versus this surface. It's only 1.4, so it's not very much at all. Again, I need to make sure I get rid of these curves on surface, and it's probably worth isolating that surface and just checking what curves on surface we got, just so we don't end up with multiple ones. So now I'm going to align that. It's just G0 project Z, and because it's you know, it's degree 2 across there, but I want the middle, really I want the middle points to move with this. And so if we align that just like that, we're only moving the edge points. We want the middle points to move as well. So if you put blend on, make the extra rows 1, so it picks up the middle one, and put the blend factor in of 1, then it stretches it between this edge and this edge, so you get a more consistent result. And then this one, which is slightly different in the sense that we've got higher degree, we'd need to pick up 2 rows there. And we had the higher degree because it wasn't aligning in these ends here when we did it with the low degree. Always want to put the CVs on, see what's going on. This one again, if we align that, project Z, but because it's only degree 2, we want extra CV rows to be 1. And I'm going to align it to this surface, which is changed slightly. And I've got blending on. Why is that not picking up? Probably because it's not registered. Just need to wake it up again. So the same settings, so that one into there. Now hopefully these were aligned before. They shouldn't have changed at all unless I've made some error. And then in this direction, these should be the same as before. We haven't touched those, and these ones hopefully will still be aligned because I've done it, because I've moved both edges up, then those should still be aligned, hopefully, which they are, which is good. So I'm going to save that. Might as well look at the big picture again. Just see that we're on track. So this untrimmed, this surface has not been trimmed, and so we have to look at it up from underneath to see what's going on. It doesn't look too bad. I think with more time, you know, I'd get those highlights even better. But so now this is the bit that is the other tricky bit, is all this blending stuff here. Is trying to get well, first of all, trimming this out and knowing what's going to happen here, and then getting all of this to work together. Put those sections on. So we've got this dip in here. It looks to me that this actually needs to grow an awful lot more, so we can actually start try and get that sort of shape in there. But ultimately it's going to wash out to nothing when we get down here. And then this surface here also will wash out to nothing. Of course, the surface underneath there, which I'm looking at thinking what's going on here, that doesn't actually doesn't need to go as far as I've got it going. So let's make that, let's just make that, move that back a bit. So this comes through here, but obviously this surface doesn't exist beyond this point. So why not just reduce the size of that so we're not looking at something that we don't need to look at. So we just make that shorter in there. So this has got to wash out to nothing as well by the time it gets to the front here. So we've got that surface, and then this. Okay. Yeah, it probably makes sense to make this much bigger. Put that in. And on that one, it's going to sit on that one and that one. Now we did these curves before, which were like that, which were just roughed in, and now we're where we are. I think I just need to do the same again on these sections. So I'm going to create yet another layer. Just call it curves, and then it'll just put a hash on the end, or not, as the case may be. It hasn't put a hash on the end. So we do what we did last time, which is edit point curves, and I made them degree 1, and I'm going to go from somewhere along here. Doesn't really matter if I pick up the section or the data, to be honest. So I'm going to pick that curve and then that surface. I've got it as 2 surfaces, haven't I? Okay. Some CVs on there. So if I just copy these edges here and I'll put a pivot point on that end and I'll scale it non-proportionally there. So we're trying to get down to this sort of line, and maybe make the degree smaller. And then from here we can just put in a straight line. End point there. Then I'll make that degree 3, just so we can align it. So this one's just a guide, so I don't need the CVs on it. It's just a guide as to where I was going to go with it. Put history on there. Something like that. Let's have a look at that inside view. Just see that those curves are reasonably close to that guide, which they're not. So we should raise those up a bit. Get rid of that curve. We don't actually need that one. So because I've got history on, I can move those around. They only have to be roughly in the right ballpark of where we want it to be. Because when we put the surfaces on, of course, we'll be aligning them to surfaces so we get them in space in the correct position. I'll get rid of that curve. We don't need that one. And I'm going to change the color of that so I can see it easily. So we've got these two surfaces here, and we can use this object align blend. We can go from here to here, and we just make sure we pick up all of the intermediate holes there with blend factor of 1 on it. Just stretches it from that across there, so it just keeps the sort of pattern of CVs nice and something like that. And yeah, we don't need those locators either now. Just bring everything back in. Now, because it's just aligned to a curve, it knows nothing about the surface that it should be sitting on. And so I want to pick up this surface, and then these surfaces, and we'll align those in G2. So this is going to be G2, project Z. I'll take history off. It'll protest because there's history on there. I didn't. Maybe I didn't have history. Doesn't matter. And that doesn't look right. That's because I've got position on. And take blending off so we don't affect the other end. And then we'll do the same thing on that one there. That's better. It might make sense to actually open this up a bit as well. So I'm deviating from the mesh here, but hopefully it'll still get the character of what we want to do. Let's have a look at that in top view. Sure, I'll change it again before long. But so when we're washing this out, what we'll need to do is put surfaces off the front of these surfaces here, which then just merge into the other surfaces. So we've got this front surface there, and it would make sense for us to join this up to that point so we can get that to flow into there. So I don't know whether this will probably go badly wrong if I try and extend that surface. That's not too bad actually, because the CVs aren't as neat and tidy as they could be. They could all be straightened up, but we're not going to do that. So that crosses over there. I could then go and do a trim convert on that. So I'll trim convert it to that edge there. And then we could we want that point to join up with here really. So let's go and do an align on there. And into the front surface. So I want it to go to that point there. So we'll put edge on. It's going to be a partial edge, and we're going to drag that up to that point there. And then we just want to blend it a little bit, just so that it says blends on. Oh, it's because I've got G0 on again, isn't it? G2. So actually, we want to take blending off. Put blending on, but only 1 point. So pick up that one. Now that's going off at a funny angle there, which doesn't look great. Vector isn't necessarily going to do the right thing either, and but we can, because we've got skew on there, we can actually change the angle of that. So we can actually just bring that down so it looks a bit neater going that way. And so it says I've got G2 on. I want to see the continuity. So it says position is 0.01. Let's increase the degree slightly to see if we can get that to work there. I'm sure that we're going to have to split this up at some, because I've got it aligned there, but it doesn't mean it's going to be aligned on this side at all. And then, so we've got that surface, and then we've got this other surface in here, this one here, which is going all across there. Let's have a look at that in plan view, in top view. So again, this ought to just follow this line. So let's just see what happens if I just extend it. It sort of behaves itself quite nicely. It's okay. So we want to trim convert it to that front edge, and we also want to move that across there. So actually, what I could do is just try moving that across. So I'm just going to move that whole, and I didn't want to move it in the X direction. I just want to move it in that direction, and then we'll do that with that one as well, just to get that into a better shape. Maybe move that one back. So it's all sort of very rough, but and then we can trim and convert that to that front edge. There's too much going on here. Let's take the mesh off. So we don't need the sections on for the time being. Now this one is not aligned to anything at the minute. We want to find how that intersects this, or we need to design that, work that out, which is just trying to think how this would best work. It might be just follow that line down, but it all starts to merge together. It's sort of, it's not too critical, but you can't always think of everything ahead of actually doing it. Let's go into intersect here, just see what this does onto that surface there. So that's the current intersect of the two, which is obviously not what we want at all. It needs to be neat and tidy and come down this way, I think. So let's just delete that. So I think I'm just going to follow this line here. I'm not sure whether it's the right thing to do, but time will tell when we actually put everything else in. Let's duplicate that edge here. And then we can extend that through. So to modify this, I want it to follow that line pretty much. I'm going to duplicate this edge as a curve, and then I'm going to align it into that curve there. So it just follows that shape very roughly. And we can snap to the intersect of those two curves there. You can see that going on there. And I'll just put blend on just so that blends back a bit. So something like that. And then we'll pick that surface and that surface, that curve rather. Get rid of the curves on surface because that's going to cause a problem if I try and do a trim convert, and then we'll extend that out, do a trim convert on that, projecting the Z direction. Then we'll get rid of that curve. This point we need to just drag down to here. So it's going to be a partial edge here into that front bit. That's the wrong bit. Just do that again. partial edge into this front bit. It's because we've got trimmed bits on top of trimmed bits. It's all a bit difficult to see. And I want to put vector on. Well, see what vector does. Vector's not so good, but I'll change that to skew and change that one to skew, so it comes off at an angle. And I've got blend on of 1, so it's picking up that point there. See what happens if we take that off. Doesn't make much difference. We haven't got an alignment at the minute, but it's not far off. Let's make that 3. Let's make it 4 and see what the CVs look like when I do that. And they look okay. They look okay, except that this is not right. So let's go into G0. So this is lifting it up far too much here. And the problem is because we're trying to align it to that front edge, but it's trying to get everything to flow into that one shape, that we may need a much more localized change than this. It may be that we actually have to put in another surface in here just to blend between here and here, because when we look at that section, actually that's pretty much what's going on. I think that if I try and just align that to G2 there, it's too much. That we actually want a blend surface in from somewhere here. This needs to come right back to here, in fact, and then we'll have an extra surface in there just to get around that area. Because if I just go put G2 on, you can see how much it lifts it up. It's just far too much. You could sometimes, of course, we could increase the degree, but we haven't got much room for that. We've only got degree 7. We could increase the spans, would be another option, which is equivalent to adding another surface, and that maybe that's the answer. So that's much more localized now. That's more like it. That's closer to where we want it to be. So maybe we'll go for that option, because that's nice and simple. It's just adding some spans. So the more spans I add, the more localized it is. It's just a question of whether we really want that many spans across that sort of area. Difficult to see them, but we're adding spans up here where we don't really need spans. So the better solution would be to split that into 2, to be honest, which we can do. I'm just going to save that.